Dog runs happily to its police owner, but suddenly stops and starts barking like crazy. The Atlanta International Cargo Terminal was sweltering under the scorching July sun, the air thick with the scent of jet fuel and heated metal. Officer Sarah Collins wiped sweat from her forehead while watching Max, her K9 partner, methodically sniff a row of containers freshly arrived from Asia. After 5 years together, she knew every nuance of his behavior, the way his ears moved, his breathing rhythm, even the tension in his muscles when something caught his attention. The Belgian shepherd's dark coat glistened in the sunlight as he worked, his movements precise and purposeful. Today marked their 547th cargo inspection together. They'd had 28 drug seizures, 12 weapons cases, and 3 human trafficking interventions. Max had been crucial in each one, his instincts never failing. The other officers called them the Dynamic Duo, a nickname that made Sarah roll her eyes, but secretly filled her with pride. "Sector D7 clear," Sarah reported over the radio, preparing to move to the next area. That's when she noticed it. Max, who always maintained a rigorous search pattern, broke his routine. He stopped abruptly in front of a navy blue container, his entire body tense like a violin string about to snap. Sarah knew that posture. It was the classic signal that Max had detected drugs. But something was different. Instead of sitting and pointing with his muzzle as he usually did, Max looked at her and let out a low whimper, almost a lament. His amber eyes, usually sharp with certainty, held something she'd never seen before, what looked almost like concern. "What is it, buddy?" Sarah approached, her hand instinctively on her holster. The cargo manifest read, "Bangkok to Atlanta, priority shipping, temperature controlled," which wasn't unusual for certain types of cargo. Max took a few steps toward her but suddenly stopped. The bark that followed wasn't his usual assertive tone. It was something visceral, desperate. In 8 years with the K9 unit, she'd never seen Max act like this. "Dispatch. Officer Collins requesting backup at Sector D7. Possible irregular situation." She kept her voice steady, but her mind was racing. The container had just arrived from Bangkok, according to the documentation. Declared cargo listed as regional handicrafts, consigned to an import company she didn't recognize. Everything looked in order on paper, which in her experience often meant the opposite was true. Max was now alternating between sharp barks and low whines. Officer Mike Rodriguez, her usual backup, arrived first. "What have we got, Collins?" he asked, eyes scanning the area. "Something's off," Sarah replied, gesturing to Max, who was now pacing in front of the container. "I've never seen him like this, not even during that heroin bust last spring." Mike watched Max for a moment. In the K9 unit, they learned to trust their dog's instincts. "Standard procedure says we wait for narcotics," he said slowly. But Max has never been wrong," Sarah finished. She remembered their first day together, how skeptical she'd been about the rescued fighting dog becoming a police K9. Now she couldn't imagine trusting anyone else more. The decision crystallized in her mind. "Let's open it," she announced, already reaching for her flashlight. Mike nodded, calling for additional backup as Sarah approached the container's doors. The metallic creak echoed across the cargo yard. The beam of flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing dozens of ornate wooden crates stacked with precision. The air inside was cooler, regulated by a humming climate control unit. Sarah let Max take point, carefully observing his every reaction. The Belgian shepherd moved with determination through the narrow path between the crates until he stopped in front of a larger crate partially covered with silk fabrics. That's when they heard it. A sound so faint it could have been imagination. A muffled mewl that made Max's ears prick forward. "Clear the container," she ordered. As the other officers backed out, she carefully approached the crate, Max standing guard beside her. With steady hands, she removed the silk covering, revealing a beautifully carved wooden box with small holes drilled along its sides. The crate was secured with a padlock, but a few precise hits with a breaching tool took care of that. Sarah's flashlight beam illuminated the ventilation holes first, then swept across the straw-lined interior. And there, huddled in a corner, was a tiger cub, no bigger than a house cat. Its orange and black fur was dull, its eyes half closed from what she guessed were sedatives. Max let out a soft whimper, so similar to the sound he'd made when Sarah found him years ago, injured and scared after being rescued from an illegal fighting ring. It was the sound of someone who recognized another being's pain. He edged closer to the crate, his posture no longer alert, but protective. "Dispatch." Sarah's voice trembled slightly as she keyed her radio. "Requesting immediate presence of veterinary team and environmental police. We have a situation much bigger than we thought." As sirens began wailing in the distance, Sarah watched Max lie down near the crate, his eyes fixed on the cub, as if standing guard. In that moment, she knew her life and career had just changed forever. What had started as another routine patrol had become the first thread of a ball of yarn that she suspected would reveal a much darker web of cruelty and greed. The bark that changed everything still echoed in her mind as she knelt beside Max, placing a gentle hand on his neck. "Good job, partner," she whispered. "You saved a life today." But as the red and blue lights of patrol cars began illuminating the cargo yard, their strobes reflecting off the endless rows of containers, Sarah couldn't imagine that this tiger cub would be just the beginning. Soon, she and Max would find themselves at the center of an investigation that would test not only their partnership, but also the limits of their courage and compassion. 3 years earlier, the basement of an abandoned warehouse in South Atlanta had smelled of blood and fear. Sarah Collins, then a junior officer with the Vice Unit, had pressed herself against a cold concrete wall, listening to the savage sounds echoing from below. The dogfighting ring they'd been tracking for months had finally slipped up, and now the raid was in progress. "Vice Unit in position," she whispered into her radio, hand steady on her service weapon. The sounds of fighting dogs and shouting men grew louder, punctuated by the sickening crack of a whip. Sarah's jaw clenched. After 6 months undercover building this case, she knew exactly what was happening in that basement. The raid happened in a blur of flashbangs and shouted commands. Sarah moved through the chaos with practiced precision, but nothing had prepared her for what she found in the back room. Dozens of cages lined the walls, each containing a dog in various states of injury and neglect. And in the last cage, barely visible in the dim light, a Belgian shepherd lay motionless. "Need medical assistance in the back room," Sarah called out, already working on the cage's lock. The dog's breathing was shallow, his dark coat matted with blood and dirt. But when she finally got the door open, something unexpected happened. Instead of showing aggression or fear, the dog lifted his head and met her gaze with startling intelligence. "Hey there, big guy," she whispered, staying low and non-threatening. "Let's get you out of here." "Mindy." The dog's tail thumped once against the cage floor, a gesture of hope that would change both their lives forever. The police report would later detail the recovery of 17 dogs, most destined for rehabilitation centers. But the Belgian shepherd, whom Sarah started calling Max, was different. Despite his injuries, he showed remarkable focus and an ability to read human emotions that the K9 trainers had never seen before. "He's got something special," Lieutenant Davidson had said, watching Max work through basic commands just weeks after his rescue. "Most fighting dogs never recover this well, but this one, he's not just surviving, he's thriving." Sarah spent every free moment at the training facility during Max's recovery. She watched him transform from a wounded fighter into something extraordinary, a dog who channeled his past experiences into an unwavering desire to protect and serve. Now, standing in the cargo terminal's veterinary office, Sarah saw that same resilience in Max as he kept vigil near the sedated tiger cub. The emergency vet, Dr. Patricia Martinez, worked quickly to assess the cub's condition. "He's been professionally sedated," Dr. Martinez noted, checking the cub's vital signs. Whoever did this knows exactly what they're doing. These aren't amateurs. Sarah nodded, her mind already racing through the implications. Professional smugglers meant organized crime, possibly international connections. Will he make it? Yes, but that's not what worries me. Dr. Martinez straightened up, pulling off her latex gloves. This level of sophistication suggests a larger operation. In my experience, where there's one cub, there's usually more. Max's ears perked up at those words, as if he understood the gravity of the situation. He hadn't left his self-appointed post near the examination table, his behavior reminding Sarah of those early days after his rescue. Officer Collins, a young uniformed cop, appeared in the doorway. "We found something else in the container. You're going to want to see this." Sarah exchanged a look with Max, who was already on his feet. "Lead the way." The container had been completely unpacked now, its contents spread out under the harsh cargo terminal lights. A senior customs officer, white-haired and grim-faced, held up a shipping manifest. "Look at these papers. They're perfect. Too perfect. Every stamp, every signature exactly where it should be. This level of forgery takes serious resources." Sarah studied the documents, remembering similar paperwork from her undercover days. "They're building a paper trail, making it look legitimate." "Exactly. And look at this." He pointed to a series of routing numbers. "These shipments have been coming through regularly, always from different points of origin, but following the same basic pattern." Max suddenly tensed beside her, his attention drawn to another opened crate. Sarah followed his gaze, noticing what looked like scratch marks on the inside. Old marks. This wasn't the crate's first cargo. "How long?" she asked, already dreading the answer. "Based on these records, at least 8 months, maybe longer." Sarah felt a familiar fire building in her chest, the same one she'd felt in that basement 3 years ago. She looked down at Max, seeing in his alert posture that he felt it too. They had stumbled onto something big, something that went far beyond a single smuggled tiger cub. "I want everything we have on similar shipments from the past year," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen the darkness and chosen to fight it. Manifests, routing numbers, consignees, everything. As the customs officer hurried to comply, Sarah knelt beside Max, scratching behind his ears. "Looks like we've got another big one, partner." Max leaned into her touch, but his eyes stayed fixed on the crate with its telling scratch marks. Like Sarah, he knew that some scars ran deeper than the surface, and that sometimes those scars gave you the strength to fight harder for others. Thunder rolled in the distance as the afternoon storm clouds gathered over Atlanta. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from her supervisor, probably wondering why a routine cargo inspection had turned into a multi-agency operation. But as she watched Max's alert reaction to every new crate being opened, she knew they were just scratching the surface of something much bigger and much darker than anyone had imagined. The Hartsfield-Jackson Airport's security office hummed with activity at 3 a.m., screens casting a pale blue glow over Sarah's tired face. She'd been reviewing surveillance footage for 6 hours straight, Max dozing at her feet. The tiger cub was safe at a wildlife sanctuary, but something about the case kept nagging at her, a pattern just beyond her grasp. "Coffee." Officer Rodriguez appeared beside her desk, 2 steaming cups in hand. "You look like you could use it." "Thanks, Mike." Dean, Sarah accepted the cup, her eyes never leaving the screen. "Look at this. Every shipment from the last 3 months arrived during Thompson's shift at Customs." Mike leaned in, frowning. "Jack Thompson? The supervisor?" "The same." Sarah pulled up another file. 20 years with the department's spotless record, due to retire next month. But here's the interesting part. He's processed every suspicious container we've flagged. Max stirred at her feet, ears perking up at approaching footsteps. Agent Diana Chen from Fish and Wildlife Service strode into the office, looking as fresh as if it wasn't the middle of the night. "We got the DNA results back," Chen announced, dropping a file on Sarah's desk. "Your tiger cub, it's Sumatran, critically endangered, worth about $250,000 on the black market." Sarah whistled low. "That's quite a payday." "That's nothing," Chen continued. Based on the shipping patterns you uncovered, we estimate at least 12 similar shipments in the past year. Do the math. $3 million minimum. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't just smuggling anymore, this was organized crime territory. Max suddenly sat up, alert. Sarah had learned to trust his instincts. Moments later, Jack Thompson himself walked into the office, his weathered face betraying no emotion as he surveyed the late-night gathering. "Burning the midnight oil, Collins?" His tone was friendly, but something in his eyes set Max on edge. "Just being thorough, sir." Sarah casually minimized the surveillance footage. "Interesting case." "Indeed." Thompson lingered a moment too long. "Don't work too hard. Sometimes things are better left alone." As he walked away, Max let out a low growl, something he never did without cause. Sarah reached down to quiet him, but her mind was racing. "Was that a threat?" "Tell me you caught that," Mike muttered. "Oh yeah." Sarah reopened the footage. "And I'm betting our friend's going to make some interesting calls tonight." She wasn't wrong. Within an hour, Agent Chen's team reported unusual activity at a private hangar on the airport's north side. Sarah and Max were first on scene, arriving just in time to see Thompson hurrying inside. "Police, stop right there!" Sarah's command echoed across the tarmac. Thompson ran. Sarah and Max gave chase, their footsteps thundering through the empty hangar, but Thompson wasn't running away. He was running towards something, or someone. A figure emerged from behind a small cargo plane, and Sarah's blood ran cold. Dr. James Morrison, the airport's senior veterinarian, the one who had been certifying all international animal shipments. "It's over," Sarah called out, drawing her weapon. "Both of you, hands where I can see them." Morrison smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Officer Collins, somehow I knew you'd be trouble. Max, too." He reached slowly into his coat. "But you don't understand what you're dealing with." Max's warning bark came just as Morrison pulled out not a weapon, but a phone. "Last chance to walk away. Some very powerful people are invested in this operation." Sarah stood her ground. "Powerful enough to kill a federal witness?" Morrison's smile faltered. "What witness? The one who just finished talking to the FBI about your operation. Did you really think Thompson here was the only one we were watching?" It was a bluff, but Morrison's reaction told her everything. As he lunged for something behind the plane, Max sprang into action. Sarah had never seen him move so fast, taking Morrison down with practiced precision. Backup arrived to find Morrison and Thompson in custody, but Sarah knew this was just the beginning. In Morrison's phone, they found contacts leading to some of Atlanta's most prominent citizens. Max had uncovered not just a smuggling ring, but a network of wealthy collectors trading endangered animals like luxury cars. As dawn broke over the airport, Sarah sat with Max in their patrol car, scratching his favorite spot behind the ears. "We've stirred up a hornet's nest, buddy." She looked at the messages already flooding her phone. Calls from brass, federal agencies, even the mayor's office. "You know what that means?" Max looked up at her, tail thumping against the seat. "Yep, we're just getting started." But neither of them could know just how deep this case would go or what it would cost them to see it through. As Atlanta woke up to another summer day, the real danger was just beginning to surface. The morning sun hadn't yet touched the Atlanta skyline when Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hangar 7, come alone, bring the dog." She glanced at Max, who sat alert in the passenger seat of her unmarked car, his breath fogging the window. "What do you think, partner? Trap or tip?" Max's ears twitched at her voice, but his eyes remained fixed on the row of private hangars ahead. After the arrests of Thompson and Morrison 2 days ago, every contact could be either a breakthrough or a bullet. The hangar stood isolated at the edge of the private aviation area, its metal walls reflecting the pre-dawn gloom. Sarah checked her vest, then her backup piece. "Stay close," she whispered to Max as they approached the side door. Inside, the hangar was a cathedral of shadows, filled with the musty scent of old canvas and aviation fuel. A single figure stood in a pool of dim light, Jenny Chen, Dr. Morrison's assistant vet. Her hands trembled as she clutched a thick folder to her chest. "I thought you should see this," Jenny's voice cracked, But if they find out I'm here... Max moved forward, his posture relaxed, a sign Sarah had learned to trust. Not a threat, but someone scared. We can protect you, Sarah said, keeping her distance. But I need to know what's in that folder. Records. Not just of the animals they smuggled, but of the people who ordered them. Jenny's eyes darted to the shadows. Rich people, powerful people. They have private zoos, collections. They treat endangered species like trading cards. Sarah stepped closer. Names. Judges. CEOs. A senator's wife. Jenny thrust the folder forward. Dr. Morrison kept detailed records. Insurance, he called it. Said no one would dare touch him as long as he had proof of who was buying. Boom. As Sarah reached for the folder, Max suddenly stiffened. His warning bark echoed through the hangar just as the overhead lights blazed to life. That's far enough. The voice belonged to Captain Marcus Wade, head of airport security. He emerged from behind a small plane, flanked by two men Sarah didn't recognize. Neither wore uniforms. Captain? Sarah's hand moved toward her weapon. Don't. Wade's voice was almost gentle. You're a good cop, Collins. One of my best. But this is bigger than you understand. I understand plenty. Sarah kept her body between Wade and Jenny. Like how much money you're making from this operation. Money? Wade laughed. This isn't about money. This is about power, influence. Do you know what people will do for someone who can get them something no one else can have? What doors open? Max's growl rumbled through the tension. Walk away, Wade continued. Take a promotion. Transfer to any unit you want. The dog too. But that folder stays here. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. The smart play was to back down, live to fight another day. But then she thought of the tiger cub, of all the animals treated like commodities, of Max, and how different his life could have been. Max, she said quietly. God. What happened next was a blur of motion and sound. As Wade's men reached for their weapons, Max launched into action, years of training transforming him into a force of controlled fury. Sarah tackled Jenny behind a tool chest as gunshots echoed through the hangar. Stay down! Sarah returned fire, her shots forcing Wade and his men behind the plane. She heard tires screeching outside, backup arriving. The cavalry was coming, but would it be the right cavalry? Max had one of the men pinned, the other scrambling for the exit. Wade was nowhere to be seen. As red and blue lights began flashing through the hangar windows, Sarah heard a sound that made her blood run cold, the whine of aircraft engines starting. He's running! Jenny clutched the folder like a shield. That folder is the only proof. Sarah faced a choice. Stay with her witness and the evidence or pursue Wade. By protocol, she should secure the scene. But Wade had answers they needed, connections that might never surface otherwise. Give me the folder, Sarah decided. Get in my car and lock the doors. When our people arrive, ask for Agent Chen by name, only her. As Jenny ran for the car, Sarah and Max sprinted toward the sound of engines. The morning air hit them like a wall as they emerged onto the tarmac. Wade's plane was already moving, picking up speed. Wanna catch a bad guy? Sarah looked at Max, who was already coiled like a spring. Together they raced across the tarmac, closing the distance as the plane turned toward the runway. What followed would become legend in the department. How an officer and her K-9 partner forced down a plane full of evidence by targeting its landing gear. How they exposed a network of corruption that reached into the highest levels of Atlanta society. But in that moment, as dawn painted the sky in shades of fire, Sarah thought only of the promise she'd made to herself and Max the day they found the tiger cub. Some fights were worth any price. Some truths had to come to light, no matter the cost. The plane's engines screamed as Max closed in on the landing gear. Sarah raised her weapon, knowing the next few seconds would change everything. One way or another, there was no turning back now. Red emergency lights strobed through the heavy rain as Sarah's unmarked car sped through Atlanta's warehouse district. The folder from Jenny had revealed something bigger than exotic pets for the wealthy. A sophisticated operation using the airport as a transit point for endangered species worldwide. But it was the last text from her informant that had sent Sarah and Max racing through the storm. "They're moving everything tonight. Warehouse 17, hurry!" Max sat rigid in the passenger seat, his focus absolute despite the thunder that rattled the windows. They'd been through enough firefights together that Sarah knew his tells, the slight lift of his ears, the tension in his shoulders. He sensed what was coming. "Central, Officer Collins requesting backup at 1750 Industrial Way." Sarah spoke into her radio. Static answered. She tried again. Nothing. Either the storm was interfering with communications or someone had made sure she wouldn't get backup tonight. The warehouse loomed ahead, a massive concrete structure with broken windows that reflected the lightning. Sarah killed the engine 2 blocks away, checking her weapon and vest one last time. "Ready, partner?" Max's soft whine wasn't fear, it was anticipation. They approached through the rain, using parked trucks as cover. 3 unmarked vans were backed up to the loading dock, their engines running. Sarah caught glimpses of movement inside the warehouse, armed men loading crates with air holes. "Police, freeze!" Sarah's command cut through the storm as she stepped into view, weapon drawn. For a split second, everything stopped. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded from the warehouse doors. Sarah dove behind a concrete barrier as bullets sparked off metal around her. Max was already moving, using the training that had made him legendary in the K9 unit. He targeted the nearest gunman with precision, taking him down as Sarah provided covering fire. "Collins!" Wade's voice boomed from inside. "Should have taken the promotion!" Sarah spotted movement on the loading dock. They were still loading animals into the vans. Through the open warehouse door, she caught glimpses of cages, more tiger cubs, exotic birds, even what looked like a young orangutan. "Last chance to walk away," Wade called out. "Or we do this the hard way." Sarah's answer was to signal Max forward. They'd practiced this movement hundreds of times. She would advance while he circled around, creating a pincer movement that had broken many standoffs. But Wade knew their tactics. As Sarah moved to engage the gunman on the left, a sharp crack split the air. A tranquilizer dart missed Max by inches, embedding in a wooden crate behind him. "Think we wouldn't come prepared for your dog?" Wade's laugh echoed through the warehouse. "Those darts carry enough sedative to drop a bear. One hit and your partner's done." Sarah felt cold fury rise in her chest. They'd known she was coming, had planned specifically to take Max out of the equation, but Wade had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated just how well she and Max could read each other. Without a word, Sarah threw her backup flashlight high and to the right. The beam caught the rainfall, creating a strobing distraction. In that moment of confusion, she and Max moved as one. Max darted between the crates, becoming a shadow among shadows. Sarah laid down, suppressing fire, forcing Wade's men to cover. She heard the sharp report of the tranquilizer gun again, but Max was already elsewhere, using the tactics that had made him unbeatable in training scenarios. A scream from the back of the warehouse told her Max had found his target, the shooter with the tranquilizer gun. Sarah used the distraction to advance, taking down 2 more gunmen with well-placed shots to their legs. "Wade!" she shouted. "It's over!" "Not yet." His voice came from near the vans. "You have no idea what you're interrupting, the money involved, the people who need this shipment to happen." "You mean like Senator Morrison's wife?" Sarah moved closer, keeping the cages between her and his voice. "Or Judge Reynolds? Jenny's records had all their names, Wade. The FBI has everything." Lightning flashed, illuminating the scene in stark relief. Wade stood by the last van, a silver case in one hand, a gun in the other. Behind him, Sarah caught glimpses of movement in the cages. Beautiful, rare creatures destined for private collections. "You think the FBI can touch these people?" Wade's laugh was bitter. "They own the system, Collins. By morning, those records will disappear. Jenny too, probably." Max's growl rumbled from somewhere in the shadows. Wade spun, trying to track the sound, but the rain and echoes made it impossible. "She's under federal protection." Sarah advanced, her weapon steady. along with copies of those records in every major news organization's servers. It's done, Wade. Don't make it worse. For a moment, she thought he would surrender. Then his eyes hardened. If I'm going down. He raised his gun, not toward Sarah, but toward the nearest cage. Let's see how much these animals are worth dead. Max burst from the shadows like an avenging spirit, his timing perfect as always. As Wade turned to fire, Sarah took the shot she'd been waiting for. Wade's gun clattered to the concrete as he fell, clutching his shoulder. The sound of sirens finally cut through the storm, real backup at last. Sarah kept her weapon trained on Wade as Max stood guard, his fur soaked, but his posture proud. "You know what your mistake was?" Sarah asked as she secured Wade's hands behind his back. "You thought this was about money, but for some of us, doing the right thing still matters." As red and blue lights began filling the warehouse, Sarah knelt beside Max, checking him for injuries. He leaned into her touch, both of them soaked to the bone but standing tall. They had done it, but as Sarah looked at the cages full of frightened animals, she knew this victory was just the beginning. Somewhere out there, more animals needed help. More corruption needed to be exposed, and she knew as Max's warm eyes met hers that they would be ready. 2 weeks after the warehouse raid, Sarah stood at the edge of a sprawling wildlife sanctuary just outside Atlanta. The morning sun painted the autumn leaves in shades of gold and crimson as she watched Max explore the perimeter of a specially designed enclosure. Inside, the tiger cub they'd rescued, now named Spirit, was growing stronger every day. "He's doubled in weight since you brought him in." Dr. Rachel Foster, the sanctuary's head veterinarian, approached with a clipboard in hand. "And those sedative effects are completely gone. He's going to be just fine." Sarah smiled, watching Spirit playfully bat at enrichment toys in his enclosure. "What about the others?" "The orangutan is thriving at the primate center, and most of the birds have been placed with certified rehabilitation facilities." Rachel checked her notes. "Thanks to Jenny's testimony, we've even identified their origins. Many of them can eventually be returned to protected areas in their native habitats." Max returned to Sarah's side, sitting at attention as Spirit noticed them and bounded closer to the fence. The young tiger's curiosity about Max had become a source of amusement for the sanctuary staff. Predator recognizing predator, but with a gentleness that defied explanation. "Officer Collins," a familiar voice called from the sanctuary's main building. Agent Chen walked toward them, looking more relaxed than Sarah had ever seen her. "Got a minute?" They walked together along the sanctuary's paths, Max trotting ahead but always looking back to check on them. "The FBI just finished their initial sweep," Chen began. "Wade's cooperation opened up everything. 47 arrests so far, including 3 judges and a state senator. The whole network is falling apart." Sarah nodded, thinking of the price paid for this victory. Jenny was still in witness protection, and there had been attempts to discredit the investigation. But the evidence was too solid, the paper trail too clear. "There's something else." Chen stopped walking. "We're creating a new task force. Joint operation, FBI, Fish and Wildlife, local law enforcement, focused specifically on wildlife trafficking through major transportation hubs. We want you to head up the K9 division." Sarah felt her breath catch. A whole division. "Your work with Max proved how effective specialized K9 units can be in detecting wildlife smuggling. We want to expand that, create teams specifically trained for this kind of work." Chen smiled. "Plus, after what you two did, every agency wants a piece of your success." Max had returned to them, sitting calmly as he listened to their conversation. Sarah looked down at her partner, remembering that day in the basement when she'd first found him. How far they'd come from those dark beginnings. "What do you think, partner? Ready to train some new recruits?" Max's tail wagged once, decisive. Later that afternoon, Sarah sat at her desk in the airport police station, finalizing her incident report. The official narrative was straightforward, a routine inspection that uncovered an international smuggling operation. But the real story, she knew, was about second chances and unshakable trust. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Spirit made friends with another rescued cub today. Thought you'd want to see this. Jisei, the attached photo showed two tiger cubs playing together, their previous trauma forgotten in the joy of the moment. Hey, Collins? Officer Rodriguez stuck his head in her office. Got some candidates for your new unit to review, including a couple of rescued dogs the shelter thinks might have potential. Sarah smiled, reaching down to scratch Max behind the ears. From fighting dog to canine hero to trainer of a new generation, his journey had only begun. What do you say we go meet them? She asked Max. His eager response made her laugh. Some might say it was just training, just a dog following commands. But Sarah knew better. She'd seen it in that basement years ago, in the cargo container with Spirit, in the warehouse during the firefight. The truly extraordinary partnerships weren't built on commands and obedience, but on trust and understanding. As they walked out into the Georgia sunset, Sarah thought about all the animals still out there needing rescue, all the traffickers yet to be caught. The work would never really be over, but now they had something they didn't have before. A team dedicated to the cause and a legacy to build on. Max walked proudly beside her, alert and ready as always. They'd started this journey as officer and K9, evolved into partners, and emerged as pioneers of something bigger than themselves. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And somewhere in the sanctuary, a young tiger named Spirit played freely, living proof that even the darkest beginnings could lead to bright futures. For Sarah and Max, that made every risk worth taking, every battle worth fighting. After all, that's what partners were for.